Καλημέρα σας και από μένα. Είμαι ο Κώστας ο Πάντος. Είμαι ο moderator του τρίτου slot του Global Azure 2020 και έχουμε τη χαρά σήμερα να υποδεχόμαστε τον Γιάννη τον Touliatos, ο οποίος στο πρώτο slot, στο πρώτο session αυτού του track θα μας μιλήσει για hybrid integration υπηρεσίες στην εποχή του Covid19. Γιάννη, σε ευχαριστούμε που είσαι σήμερα μαζί μας και η σκηνή είναι δική σου.
Καλημέρα σε όλους. Χαίρομαι που βρίσκομαι εδώ. Ευχαριστώ Κώστα, ευχαριστώ όλους. Ευχαριστώ που ήρθατε. Θα μιλήσουμε για hybrid integration solutions. Θα κάνω την παρουσίαση στα αγγλικά. So I'm switching to English. Ωραία, εύχομαι να βλέπετε όλοι. We're going to talk about hybrid integration and solutions in our COVID era, the crisis that we're going through, and beyond. Okay, so why exactly are we here? You know, the coronavirus has forced a tremendous amount of people in offices, in companies, to work from home and to stay in our homes, right? In self-isolation and in quarantine. But many businesses are struggling to access their environments, their work environments, their applications and their data in order to be productive. And at Microsoft, where we see an unprecedented demand for remote working solutions. We've seen a tremendous increase in collaboration, in video conferencing solutions, but beyond that, also accessing the data and the applications through virtual private networks, so they can connect into their on-premises infrastructures. We also are seeing a massive demand for accessing workloads in the cloud. So Windows virtual desktops. We're seeing these kinds of things. And requests from all types of businesses. So what I would like to do is think about what our new, and discuss a little bit about our new reality, working from home, remote working. Approximately 3% of the global workforce, of the workforce, around 5 million people. This is in, this is 3% of the workforce in North America. It's about 5 million people are working from home at least half of the time. So this means that the remote work population of non-self-employed people has grown by 200% in the last 15 years, and it's grown way more. It's more than 70% now of employees worldwide are working remotely at least once a week. And this has some challenges to address. So one of these areas that we need to think about is bandwidth. People in their homes haven't always considered previously about working from home with their families, downloading YouTube videos and watching Netflix and things like this. So in order to ensure a successful experience, we have to ensure that in our homes we have adequate bandwidth. And we also need to ensure that our companies allow us access to our corporate networks and our applications, but in a secure way. I think one thing to note, and I know in another slot, in another session, Michalis will be speaking about threat protection. But one thing to note is in In the COVID era now that we're living in, we have a tremendous increase in cybersecurity threats. This is going along with phishing attacks, where there's a lot of players here, bad actors that are taking advantage of the fear and uncertainty that people have. So security is of paramount importance. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of challenges. Another area to ensure successful experience from working from home is to ensure our companies have a business continuity system. What does that mean? That means backup. That means disaster recovery system. So if we have a data center or a small business, medium business, doesn't matter, in our systems, there's a problem, we need to be able to access that information and continue in those workloads and continue running them in another data center. That could be in Azure, using Azure Site Recovery as an example. We also need to ensure we have the tools to be able to collaborate effectively with our colleagues and also our community. We need to be more and more connected with our community, like what we're doing here today, all day today, sharing of best practices and information. This is critical now more than ever. So hybrid integration solutions. So in the era that we're living, not every customer has all of the requirements to be secure or to have additional capacity storage now that people are working from home more and more. So many times I hear customers, when I speak with customers as well as partners, I hear when we talk about hybrid, we still have a lot of educating to do. Hybrid doesn't mean only Azure Stack. This is the common misconception. Azure Stack as a platform, as a solution, has its use cases, but many companies are having their Windows servers anywhere from Windows Server 2008 R2, which is end of support, and all the way through Windows Server 2019. So with Azure Hybrid Services, we can extend the on-premises environment of customers into Azure to provide business continuity, so Azure Site Recovery, to offer backup services such as Azure Backup. And one thing, and as well as extending the storage capacity of these companies, right? With Azure File Sync, and I'll talk about it in more detail later, we have ways to store files in a file share in Azure that are, say, for example, older than 60 days, and this will then relieve companies' on-premise file shares as they're working more and more online. The other area to really pay attention to is our Azure Security Center and Azure Update Management. As we're going to be more and more connected, more online, we need to make sure that our systems are patched, whether they're Windows systems or Linux systems, and companies have many different approaches, many different systems to manage, and here Azure Update Management can help to centralize the update process. there's a lot to cover and a lot that we can discuss. Keeping this high level to give those of you an idea and food for thought. And the other area to think about is the Windows Admin Center. So this, some of you may or may not be aware of Windows Admin Center. This is a web-based tool. I have a screenshot of Windows Admin Center. This is freely available for those that have Windows Server. And there's a very, it's basically a single pane of glass to manage, maintain the server or servers. You can connect to your certificate management systems. You can connect to your event viewer and file systems through a web-based file explorer. But more importantly, we have a way to access our Azure hybrid services, and this from the server itself, from Azure Hybrid, with using Azure Hybrid services. Then we can connect into Azure and have access and configure systems from within the server without having to actually go into Azure itself. Simplifies the configuration for backup and file sharing and so on and so forth. So if you're not familiar with Windows Admin Center, strongly recommend you to take a look. This is where, you know, the hybrid approach, you know, this is the connecting your on-premises server or servers to our public cloud, to Azure, is the approach that I'm discussing. The other approach, where you have consistent cloud services that are brought on premises, would be where companies need to have their data in their data center due to data sovereignty requirements, and that's where an Azure stack would come into play. So for disaster recovery and business continuity, the companies that have on-premises systems, it could be running Hyper-V, could be running VMware in their physical environment. But they may have multiple sites, branch sites. They might have a primary site and some branch sites. In order to fail over and have a disaster recovery system in place, we have Microsoft Azure Site Recovery. This is a useful tool for replicating the virtual machines that are either in Hyper-V or in VMware to Azure. And in the event of a disaster or a time when we need to run our workloads in a secondary disaster recovery site, this is where we can then fail over using Azure Site Recovery into Azure and continue running our environments. Now, Azure Site Recovery, the companies don't pay for the virtual machines in Azure except when they're actually running. So they only pay for the storage and a migration fee, and only when they actually carry out the failover and the virtual machines are running will they be paying for the usage of the virtual machines. Another use case for Azure Site Recovery is migration. So we can, if a company is considering to migrate their entire data center, they can leverage Azure Site Recovery and manage the orchestration there. The other challenge that companies are having in this COVID era now, and being away from the office and away from their data centers, are updates and update management challenges. So regardless of the operating system, whether it's Windows or Linux, or on premises or in the cloud, either physical machines, virtual machines, they need to be updated and patched appropriately, especially now where we have a lot of increased cybersecurity challenges and threats. So we also need to ensure and have a way to make sure that our servers are in a state where they're compliant, they're updated, and a way to manage that in a central way. So one way to do this is using Azure Update Management. So this allows and checks for the update status of our Windows and Linux servers, whether they're on-prem or hosted in Azure, to ensure that they're in a patched state. If they're not, you get warned. You have a notification that the servers are in a non-compliant state, and then you have from centrally you can install the updates, whether they're Windows or Linux, and patch systems appropriately. So this avoids having to use different products and different panes, it's different panes of glass, different tools. Especially in these times, it will simplify our management and administrative tasks and save us time to focus on other things that are more critical for the company. The Azure Update Management, it basically will assess and do a compliance scan every 12 hours automatically for Windows. For Linux, every 3 hours. And if there's an agent deployed, can do that every 15 minutes. To deploy the updates, for Linux, you can have it check against a local repository or a public repository. And with Windows, you can check for updates against Microsoft Update, or for those running WSUS, that's also possible. Windows Server Update Services. Now, another area to think of, to pay special attention to with a hybrid integration scenario is file shares. So almost every company I've encountered have some file servers and file shares that allow their users to access applications. They might have work folders as well for various devices, including mobile devices, to access their data. With creating an Azure file share, we can then help offload using cloud tiering, help offload some of the capacity requirements, or the storage capacity that's taken into that's used up within the company within the company's file servers. Cloud tiering essentially allows allows you to store files in an Azure file share, and then when a user actually will connect and click on a file in a folder that they see in the file share, it will then download to their local machine, so they can access that file. So this is a way as well of saving storage within the on-prem environment. But so this is a hybrid. The other The other area to focus is making sure if a company has multiple sites, all right, want to make sure that their users can synchronize their data and their files, and then you can have another file sharing server, on-prem file sharing server, and that will synchronize with the Azure Files share or Azure File Sync, and then users have access to all of the same files and folders that they have permissions to. Now, cloud backup, this is as well one way. Instead of using Azure Backup, you can just for the servers themselves can use Azure Backup to backup of the Azure file share itself and provide additional business continuity for the companies. Now imagine if a file server in one of the locations were to go down, then can easily bring in an additional VM, a file sync server, and synchronize those files in minutes, depending on various parameters. So again, there's a lot of components that are available for integrating into Azure from on-premise environment using the Windows Admin Center, the web-based UI I mentioned before, whether environments or larger companies, but can make use of various tools and services from within Azure. So networking is one, our Azure Network services, Azure Site Recovery for business continuity for disaster recovery scenarios, Azure Backup for backing up and restoring of files, Azure Update Management for ensuring our companies, our servers are patched appropriately and are compliant. Azure File Sync in order to ensure that documents and files are properly synchronized and accessible to users regardless of their locations. And Azure Monitor, which is keeping monitoring all these services. Now, something to be aware of is in Azure we have many differences, too many to talk about in such a short period of time, but there will be other discussions as well in later sessions today. But also I encourage you to leverage our resources on docs, on our website, on our Microsoft website, to learn and be aware more about our networking services. One area that I'd like to focus on and have you think about and look into more is VPN, so virtual private networks, and also then to ensure high availability, looking at load balancers, Azure Load Balancer, and then keeping and paying special attention as well to security. So looking at network security groups and web application firewalls and distributed denial of service protection. These are areas that I would encourage you to look into more if you have not already. Now, I'd like to also discuss with you and share with you some other areas that may or may not you may or may not be aware of. So this discussion in this session is about COVID and solutions and integrated solutions in our in the COVID crisis and beyond. So besides the working from home and connectivity to our environments, to our work environments, we have to also take into account that many people are needing to communicate more frequently with their colleagues, with other companies. They need to also to be given guidance on how to work from home. Not everyone is able to work from home comfortably. They haven't done it. It's not in their culture, or it hasn't been something they've been used to. So companies can also make use of Power Apps, and Power Apps is also residing on Azure, on our Azure platform. It's a way to create solutions and applications very quickly with zero or low code, and this is more for companies that and advanced users that have identified processes that they want to streamline for their companies. And I want to share with you a little bit about what not only Microsoft but other companies in the community have done in response to COVID-19 and have developed various solutions. So back in January, when COVID-19 was, we were hearing about it from the outbreak in China, in Wuhan, we created a Power Business Intelligence, a Power BI monitoring, for which has visual representation and dashboards, and we could then see how the outbreak was spreading. In February, we created a communication portal with a Power Apps virtual agent. So this is similar to a chat bot, an Azure bot as well, but targeted more for companies, for larger companies. And then we also developed a crisis communication application. So when people were struggling to react and to move and mobilize their work staff and workforces to work from home and identify who to escalate things to, who are critical employees, who need to be on site, who can go and work from home. Some type of a communication application they found was necessary and was very helpful. So, and this crisis communication application is also, I have in a further slides several links for you to access and look at on your own time, but it's very useful. Remote work management solution, this was developed in March to help employees know how to work in a better way remotely. Guidance, like a one-stop shop for accessing information and guidance, and this was also done with Power Apps. The community also created in April this month an emergency hub for health organizations to be aligned to communicate, and these applications, these Power Apps, essentially were are available for mobile devices, Android or iOS, as well as on desktop or laptops and web-based. So in addition, there's a gallery of COVID-19 related emergency solutions that have been developed by the community, and those are accessible to everyone, right? So we don't have to reinvent the wheel for many of these types of solutions. So I encourage you to take a look if it applies for your companies, for your businesses. You may have some ideas. These are some information and links to additional details about how how companies deal with crisis and have these crisis communication applications. There's also, we can leverage, we've seen as well in our customers across the region here in Central Eastern Europe region where we're working, we're seeing as well integration with Teams, like we're using Teams right now, and Power Apps. We're also seeing that very much with our healthcare systems, and having doctors doing virtual consultations. So integrating Teams with our booking system and with Power Apps and so forth. So I'm not going to read through all of this. This PowerPoint and this deck will be provided to you, so you can have access to it and look at it at your own leisure. But there's a lot of good information. So in healthcare, we had an emergency response solution that was really useful for the healthcare staff. So they have access to dashboards to get insight information, like at a glance information, so they can identify, for example, how many intensive care unit beds do they have, what capacity they're at, and so forth. And managing as well and getting a view of who's which staff they have available, if they have a gap, how many patients they've discharged, etc. Very easy to visualize information, and this allows as well for the frontline staff or the nurses and other staff to log information directly into a Power App, and it's easy to do. And then of course they also have an administrative and configuration portal that they can quickly report to changing situations and conditions. I have here provided for all of you some recommended blogs and other information that might be useful for you. I found it quite useful as I've been working at Microsoft with my team and with our customers and partners, and I've put together some information around the different solutions that we have, and also just facts and figures around COVID and the COVID-19. Not all, some has to do with Azure, some has to do with Office 365 and Teams and collaboration, but these are all can be integrated together and working together. So there's quite a bit. I'm not reading through this, but I recommend you go and take some time to look at some of these links. There's information as well for our schools and education systems, so, especially here in Greece. I think some of our schools are struggling to switch to remote learning, but there's information and tips and tricks as well, also on how to work better remotely and stay connected. One thing that I highly recommend for those of you that are now working remotely, something that I'm doing with my team is having virtual coffee chats. Also thinking about virtual happy hour on like Friday evenings every once in a while, because these are things that people are missing, not just working, but the coffee chat, right? The kotsobolio, the discussions, whatever, when you're having a coffee and a coffee break with your colleagues. So if you haven't already thought about this, I highly recommend it. It's very helpful, and don't talk about work during those sessions. With my team, I have one every day, every morning. And it's optional. People can show up if they want, or not. And you know, different people show up at different times, and it's very helpful. Additional resources I have here as well for the crisis communication app that I mentioned before. And we have so much with this health bots to help with the Center for Disease Control provided questions and answers on how to do some self-assessments, and then handing off to a live person using Teams, but it's also using Azure and the health bot service and the chatbot service. And also can use bot service, the Azure bot service with Power Platform and so forth. So there's information here for you. With that, I think I finished a little bit early, but I want to have it open for questions. And thanks for your time. And I also encourage you to reach out. I'm happy to also answer questions and have discussions with each and any one of you after this event. You can find me in LinkedIn, and yeah, let's stay connected and stay strong and stay healthy.
Σε ευχαριστούμε, Γιάννη, για την πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα παρουσίαση και όλα τα resources που μοιράστηκες μαζί μας. Θα αφήσω ανοιχτό το session για λίγο, μήπως υπάρχει κάποια ερώτηση. Μέχρι τώρα δεν έχουμε κάτι στο παράθυρο. Αν κάποιος έχει κάποια ερώτηση, για λίγα λεπτά ακόμα μπορούμε να πάρουμε κάποιες ερωτήσεις. Αλλιώς θα ευχαριστήσω τον Γιάννη σε 2-3 λεπτά και θα κάνουμε resume τη συζήτηση και τις παρουσιάσεις με το Γιώργο Γραμματικό στις 12 και 4 ακριβώς.
Σας ευχαριστώ.